Hi, everybody. My name is Kate Amrine. I am a trumpet player and educator based in New York City, and I am going to tell you what Brass Out Loud is. So, Brass Out Loud is a 3-day virtual brass seminar running from January 8th through 10th, and we are super excited about this. This is our first year, and we had seen so many events happening throughout the pandemic, and we wanted to create something that was honoring diversity and honoring what we wanted to see in a brass workshop with professors and other colleagues that look like us and that represent who we want to be in and who we want in our brass community. So that's a little bit about our history. I'm going to pass it off to Melissa.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Melissa Munoz. I'm also a trumpet player. We got 3 trumpet players in the house today. I'm currently based in Austin, Texas. I'm a teacher and a student and also a player. I'm just going to give y'all a quick rundown of the faculty that we have here at Brass Out Loud in score order as per usual. In trumpet, we have Dr. Rachel Samayoa, Jennifer Murata, Kiku Collins, Billy Hunter, Chloe Rollins, Mr. Rodney Marsalis, who we have here today, Brianne Borden, Megan DeJarnett, and Miss Kate Amrine. On horn, we have Jeff Scott, Jeff Nelson, Julie Landsman, William Purvis, and Miss Rachel Jenkins. On trombone, we have Nicole Abisi, John Rojak, Martin McCain, and Abby Conant. And our tuba youth faculty is Reginald Chapman, Carol Yonch, Chanel Critchlow, and Charles Villarubia. So we have this amazing faculty lined up, and we have all kinds of courses that we're offering. Some of the ones that you can play in are the warm-up sessions as well as the performance master classes that will be taking place on Saturday and Friday. And we also have yoga classes, musician mindset classes, as well as creativity and entrepreneurship classes. Really looking forward to those. And if you want more information about the schedule and the faculty, you can visit brassoutloud.com. Okay, and one final thing before we get started, I just wanted to mention our amazing sponsors. Thank you to Yamaha, Robinson's Remedies, Shires and Eastman, as well as AR Resonance for sponsoring our masterclasses. Finally, thank you to In Memory of Manus Velaroo. All right, everybody, we are so lucky today to have Rodney Marsalis joining us, the legend, the one and only. Rodney, please tell us a little bit about your musical upbringing.
Oh, musical. Well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for asking me to join you. And I think everything you're doing is amazing. I think it's groundbreaking. I think it's really fantastic. So it's my honor to be here with you. And wow, musical upbringing. Wow, that goes back to like when I was about like 5, 6 years old, about 15 years ago, when musicians, we don't do math that well, right? um, um, uh, I was in New Orleans, and well, in New Orleans, it's kind of not a matter of whether or not you're going to play an instrument. It's just a matter of picking which instrument you're going to play. That's basically the only choice you have. So my mom, she took me to Ellis Marsalis, and he told her, well, you should have him play the trumpet because with the trumpet he can play a lot of different styles. That was his reasoning back then. And so I ended up playing the trumpet. And my very first real serious teacher was my cousin. And that was sort of an advantage because he didn't have to be very nice to me, so that was cool. He was pretty hard on me. I mean, I was 11, he was 16, and he was like really beating my butt every week on doing Clark studies and Arvin studies and all the basics. So when he left to go to New York City to go to Juilliard, he left me with his teacher, George Jansen, who was an older Italian gentleman who was very unique because he was the first one in New Orleans who would teach Black kids classical music. Up until that time, it just hadn't really happened. And even his colleagues were like, why are you teaching them classical music? Well, that's so Jansen, he was amazing. And with him, it was all about basics. He had been in New York with Bob Nagel. And he went down to New Orleans, played with New Orleans Symphony, second trumpet. And then he just hammered in about basics, cornet studies. Um, he was just a really wonderful guy. And then I went to Boston University and Curtis Institute, New England Conservatory. I did all the summer camps like Eastern Music Festival, and I was at BUTI as a kid and the Tanglewood Fellowship Program as a college student. And I was very fortunate. I got to study with Roger Voisin and Charlie Schluter and Frank Katarabic, um, Rolf Smedvig, Manny Laureano, and basically anyone who was holding a trumpet in their hand in a practice room. So those were all my teachers. I tried to make it real broad. And I had a period of time when I just practiced like 5 hours a day for about 2 years in Boston University. I just kind of closed the door and it was like this. It was super snowy outside. Didn't go outside and just went to the basement room and practiced for 5 hours a day for 2 years because that's what Sam Palafian said I should do. So that's what I did. So that was basically it.
So amazing. I love the 5 hours a day thing. Um, yeah, when I did my master's, someone told me, you should go and just walk in the practice room and not come out for 2 years, and that should be your degree. And I'm like, yeah, I think that should be it. But I think we're all doing our own little pandemic degree right now, past couple months of sheltering in and practicing up a storm.
I'm scared. I'm really scared about how people sound coming out of this. Monster thing going on. I mean, it's going to be scary.
That's so funny. You're the first person I've heard say that, and I've been thinking it this whole time. Yeah, it's crazy. It's going to be amazing. We're all going to show up to our first gig with a million people, and we're going to be like, oh, this is great. Like, everyone sounds 10 times better than when I last heard them. And hopefully I do too.
Right? Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of the fear that gets you. You don't want to show up. You don't want to be the one that sounds like you didn't practice for 10 months. So,
I love it.
So true.
So since I've been lucky enough to play with your group, I know that you and obviously everybody else sounds amazing. And I just love your group because there's some really awesomely diverse music on the program that I think is so different and so much cooler than every other brass group out there. And so I was wondering if you could share with everyone how the Rodney Marsalis Philadelphia Big Brass Group got started and how you chose all the rep.
oh, thanks, Kate. It's kind of been process of elimination, and we started really on the street in New Orleans when I was playing with New Orleans Symphony. I was about 19 years old, and we would take a brass quintet and we would go out on the street and we just put a case out. We weren't worried about anyone stealing the money because Charlie Villarubia was our tuba player. So he was like the guard. And it was amazing. We would play back and forth. We would play a set, and then this other group would play a set. James was a trumpet player. His brother was a trombone shorty. I didn't know that back then, but and they would play a set. We go back and forth. We'd play classical. They'd play Dixieland. So what we noticed was when you're on the street, that sort of barrier between the audience and the performer is not there. People can walk up to you and look over your music stand if they want to. There's no barrier between you and the audience. And that's what we tried to bring into big brass, what we do now. And when I say process of elimination, you'd see what things work, what things kind of get a response from the audience. And we started to find that, in our world of classical music, a lot of times they think, well, you can't play Earth, Wind, and Fire and Bach on the same program. That's very, that. But when you're outside playing on the street for people, they don't care if you're playing Bach Contrapunctus number 9 or if you're playing something by John Lennon. They don't care. They like to be entertained and recognize things. And music from all different eras can do that. It doesn't matter if it's Renaissance, Baroque, classical, or Dixieland. And so that's kind of that's how I choose the repertoire and how we pick repertoire to play. It's just we want the concert hall to feel like what we felt on the street.
Yeah, and I can definitely affirm that. I went to y'all's concert in Jersey City, and that's where I met you both, and it was super amazing. The diversity, number one, that I saw on stage from the group, and then from the music. It was just all kinds of different music, and really, really fun concert. And don't y'all also do some teaching while you're on tour?
We do. Usually, when someone books the group, they usually want us to do some sort of masterclass, and we usually want that to happen too in some way. So there's usually something where we'll either the day before or sometimes the day of, sometimes the day after, we'll go into the schools and we'll do master classes for whatever region that we happen to be in. And there have been some amazing experiences really all over the world with that. Here in the States, in China, incredible classes that we got to give. Everywhere, South America, amazing. There's a program down there, and it's sort of one of the largest programs of that type in the country, and we did some things for them, and it was just uplifting, incredible experiences that you have when you get to work with students. It brings a whole different energy into the concert when you've worked with students beforehand.
Yeah, for sure, because then you've had that personal interaction and you know who you're playing for. So that kind of leads me into the next question. What are some lessons you've learned through touring and performing across the world?
So sweetheart. Okay, thanks, sweetheart. Okay, okay, daddy's in the meeting. Okay. Okay. Merry Christmas. Goodbye. Okay. Sorry. I'm sorry, Melissa.
It's totally okay. She's so cute.
She knows
um,
I'm supposed to do that. She was like, "Merry Christmas, goodbye."
she just
So I'm
needed to
sorry.
let everybody
No,
know
it's
it's the
fine.
season.
I think that's the first little one we've seen on a bold chat. So welcome, everybody. Everybody's welcome.
um, yes, she's so cute. Okay, I'm just gonna ask the question again. What are some lessons that you've learned throughout touring and performing across the world?
Um, the biggest lesson is the same thing I say at the end of every concert, and that's there's only one race, and that's the human race. And it seems like a sort of a corny thing to say, but I've believed it ever since I was a kid. It's what I've always seen, and the more you travel, the more you get to see that that's the case, and that people from China to Europe and South America, all of America, they really just want the same basic things. They want to be able to take care of their families. They want safety. They want health. They want happiness. They want love. So that sort of common human thread that you get to see by traveling and being around a lot of different people, um, that's what I've learned more than anything else. That we have so much more in common than differences between human beings.
Yeah, that's incredible. Do you have any specifically touching experiences that you could share from your time on tour?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I'm trying to think. I'm thinking China and South America. Well, you threw a curveball there.
We can come back to it. We can circle back.
Or just favorite memories in general. Um,
I mean, honestly, there's so many. I mean, there was there was one time in China where we just went out to a restaurant beforehand, a few days before the concert in Beijing, and I remember the restaurant owner. I remember this very interesting foods that we had, and the restaurant owner he stayed there the whole time. I think I had like bird nest soup or something like that, and I remember he was like, we told him about the concert. Well, yeah, we're playing at the Performing Arts Center. It's that big egg-shaped thing in the middle of Beijing, and he said, "Oh, it's so wonderful!" Blah, blah. And so we told him, "Well, why don't you come?" We gave him tickets to the concert. We had these big like golden ticket things that they had given us. Um, and I remember when we played the concert, we walked out on stage, and I remember saying to my colleague, "Oh, you really shouldn't talk to me. They're not going to understand." And about two tunes in, he was like, "No, man, let's just talk to him. Let's just talk to him." And I was like, "How are we going to do that? They don't. We speak English. They speak Chinese." But he was totally right. It was Wayne Domain, by the way. That he was like he was totally right because we started to talk to them like we do normally. And the guy from the restaurant, he was in like the middle, the front row, and he was laughing and having a great time the whole time. And that sort of fear or differences, it just totally dissolved, and you just kind of forgot where you were. And that to me was really special because we were completely on the other side of the globe. And so yeah, I love experiences like that.
That's so sweet. So, not to switch gears a little bit, but how has your schedule changed during COVID times?
Well, that's the funny thing about so this being a business, because when we switched over to becoming our own business, we don't even use management anymore. We built our own company that has its own management component. And so what we're doing right now, our schedule is very similar to the way it was before because we're always working a year, 2 years, 3 years out in advance. So that's what we're doing all day long as far as our office hours. So that's very similar, actually. And the only thing that's different right now is that all the concerts that we have, and I have to say, I think just about every single concert, it just got moved back a year or moved back 2 years. So we're just basically working on those contracts and with those presenters, we spend our time. So that's kind of been the shift. My days here are really full because I have to practice because again, I don't want to be the one that sucks at the end of this. So I'm like practicing more than ever. And you have to exercise because if you just stay in one place with the whole thing, that's not good for you either. And then I spend time with family and learn new skills too. I mean, I changed the faucet in my sink and I changed the battery in my car. I plow. What did you call it with the snow? I'm from New Orleans. I bought my first snowblower. So there's like a whole bunch of new things that like I would have skills that I didn't have that I've been able to work on. So that's kind of been my COVID experience so far.
That's awesome. I was in something last night and they were talking about how everyone is learning all these new skills, and it's so nice to hear what your new skills have been. I think sometimes when people say, like, oh, here are all the things I learned, and you're like, oh, double tonguing, like this new solo, this thing, and you're like, wait, we're all people too. Like, you can talk about what you've learned outside the trumpet. We are all people in addition to being musicians. And so I love that. And yay, family time. That must be
Yeah, and
really
the funny
nice.
those outside things can actually contribute to the trumpet. You learn more, or and vice versa. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I think now has definitely been that time. At least I had this really big revelation at the very beginning of it whenever concerts were canceled and I had all this time to practice and I was like, okay, done all my practicing. Now I have like 6 extra hours in the day. What do I do with myself when I'm not in rehearsal? And so there was kind of a struggle between, oh wait, that's right, I need to have more of a separation in my life between personal time away from the trumpet and then my time with the trumpet. So I didn't really pick up that many new skills, but I will say that my running has gotten a lot better. So there's that. I'm going to move on to another question. Do you have any advice for young musicians, especially those from underrepresented communities in the brass world?
Yeah, the best advice I can give is to make excellence your goal and keep going. Just don't quit. That's that's it. Just keep going. I mean, because that's kind of I don't really believe in talent so much because because I've had to work so hard and I've seen what hard work does over a long period of time. Um, and and I've had so many failures in my life, and every single failure led to something better if I kept going, if I didn't quit, including things like in New Orleans when they had an audition for all the district trumpet players to see if you go to state, and and I and I remember like I got switched between me and the worst player in the district, and I say worst player, I mean couldn't get up to middle C. And he went and but they switched. They put him on top and they put me on bottom. and he went to Allstate and all that, and didn't really make it. And I had to stay home that year. It was a whole year before I got a chance to do the auditions again. And my teacher, in tears, he was calling them saying, "It's impossible, it's impossible." But they just, and now in retrospect, I don't know that it was exactly a mistake. I think it was just me being at the top at Allstate. They just didn't want to see that. And my teacher just, I remember how sad he was, but I also remember how determined I was, like, and how hard I worked that year. So just not stopping, not quitting. There have been so many things in my life that have kind of knocked me back and knocked me down. And it's just, I just keep, that's why I moved to Philadelphia. It's like the Rocky thing. You just got to keep getting up, and eventually that's how you succeed. If you just keep getting up every single time. And for a young player, and I remember when I was in my 20s, I remember the thoughts in my head when I was in my 20s. So if I was to talk to my 20-year-old self, because I would, you think it's the end of the world when that bad thing happens. So me, now the 53-year-old me would say, don't give up, just keep going. So that would be my advice.
That is excellent advice that we all need to hear right now. 20-year-old, doesn't matter what age you are, I think we're all kind of just need that push to keep going, especially right now. And now there's finally a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, but for many months there, it felt like stagnant. Oh my gosh, this is never going to end. And I definitely relate to that. Every single obstacle that's come, it just feels like that's it. All right, I'm done. This is it. And then somehow something keeps coming. When one door closes, another one opens, it seems. So yeah, that's really great advice.
Absolutely.
Kate, did you want to?
Yes, I was also going to say, since we have, it looks like 7 to 10 people watching, if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments, and so we can get to them. I had a question that's not on our list of questions, if that's okay. So I'm interested in what you've been practicing and maybe what you were practicing in those 5 hours at school, but also maybe now, whatever you want to share. I feel like personally, I've discovered a lot of things in this time about what I should really be practicing. And I think maybe we've all had those kind of like light bulb moments of like, ooh, I really should work on this. And I can't believe I haven't worked on this yet. And so I was wondering if you had any of those experiences.
Sure. I'll break it up. The first thing I'll talk about what I'm practicing now and it's just because of a bet that I made, um, like about 20 years ago. I bet my cousin Wenton that I could play Moto Perpetuoso. Like 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I bet him that, right? And I remember I practiced it one summer at EMF, and I kind of was getting through it, but it was sloppy, because I didn't practice it with the metronome, right? So I didn't know, I could do the circular breathing, but I didn't work with the metronome, so it was really uneven. So I started working on it again, but this time I started working with the pandemic. I was like, okay, don't start with the piece, start with something else that's going to help you get what you need for the piece. So I went back to Clark. And I went back to Clark number 5, and I shed Clark number 5. I'm still on just the first 2 pages of that, and I work on the etude, trying to get through it in one breath, which I only do every now and then that I can actually do it. But I was like, that'll prepare me to work on the Moto Perpetuoso. So about 2 months ago, I switched over and I started working on that with the metronome this time. Duh, duh, duh. So that was like I created this long-term challenge for myself, and I still can't do it, but I think like I have like 5 or 6 months before I have to play in public again. So that's kind of but creating something like that is there's all these skills you need in order to play something that's harder. And as far as what I practiced during the 5 hours a day time, when I was in that phase, it was a lot of basics. It was a lot of fundamentals. It was a lot of the sort of Schlossberg, Clark, Walter Smith top tones. I'd spend like about maybe like half just basics, articulation things like breath attacks, whisper tones, anything basic that I picked up through the years. I was really lucky because I picked up through the years a lot of the basic things. And then you break it. Then by the time you finish that, then I'd work on etudes for my lessons. Um, I'd work on solo material. Um, and it's not that I was like trying to practice 5 hours a day. It took 5 hours to get through all of that stuff, and not all at once. It was split up in sessions all throughout the day, but that's how long it took. And especially like with excerpts, because you're learning excerpts for the first time, so that takes time. So you have to listen, study scores. It just takes a lot of time during that time period.
You mentioned whisper tones, and I was wondering if you could briefly explain what that is for viewers who maybe don't know.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out who first showed. I think it was Winton who showed it to me. And I think the person that showed him was Jerry Schwartz when went and studied with him in New York. And and it's funny because then one of my favorite trumpet players is Terry Everson, and uh, I mean, I get distracted and miss entrances as I'm listening to Terry while we're playing all the time. Um, Terry puts a big emphasis on whisper tones, and what it is, you just start where you're just air on a note, and then if you keep going, you're gonna just hear this slight vibration of the pitch that you're trying to get, and then usually when you start, it kind of comes and goes back to air. It's hard to keep it. So, but if you work on it every day for a while, it'll get to the point where you can actually make that pitch stay there. But it's under the air. You hear air, and then underneath you'll hear the pitch. Um, and you just keep working. Like I'll work on from low C to middle G, just in that register, and I'm trying to expand it. And what I notice is that it really starts to expand my response a lot. So it's a big part of the practice that I do now. And it was really interesting when we did this course for big brass that we did, the virtual course. Allison Balsam mentioned that kind of practice. Winton talked about that kind of practice. Mike Sachs, I think. So when I hear really great players talk about an exercise, of course I'm going to try to put it in my bag of tricks. So yeah,
I love it. Sorry, go ahead.
no, I was just saying whisper tone. I don't know why I don't see them written down in any books anywhere either. Like to do whisper tones. I don't know why, but I've heard so many great players talk about starting super super soft in their practice day. And even when you look at your exercise books, like if you look at the Clark, it says pianissimo at the beginning of all those different studies. I bet you that's what, and Clark, I'm sure he was an amazing virtuoso player. Why did he put pianissimo? Why didn't he put piano? Why didn't he just put mezzo forte, for all of this? We can't even really imagine how soft he must have been practicing those, but I bet you it was super, super soft.
Oh yeah, it's sort of like a hidden secret that people are doing soft playing, and I've heard it, but never read it in a book. It's the same thing. So
Yeah.
I definitely feel better when I play quieter, but our first instinct is to just play super loud. So
Yeah, yeah. Gil Johnson too, the principal. He was principal of the Philadelphia Orchestra. Someone that played with him said he used to talk about it. And if you talk to Jose Cibaja, Jose, if you want to know what Gil Johnson did, you just got to talk to Jose. It's like these secrets in our trumpet world that aren't written down really, but are passed down from generation to generation. And it's really important to get them, as many of them as you can.
yeah, and I think that's the importance of studying with different people is you just get so much different information and different perspectives. And even if it's not different information, it could just be worded a different way.
Exactly.
Um,
Or you get like that light bulb moment. Like I studied with Charlie Schluter, and I would be playing in Barcelona, principal trumpet on the stage, working on something, and then suddenly something Charlie said to me 8 years ago, 10 years ago. Oh, that's what he was talking about. That happens all the time. So yes, it's very important. Study with different people, different perspective. Like you said, sometimes it's said in just that right way that it finally makes sense to you.
I also love what you said about you're learning from everyone, the people in the practice room next to you and, other people on the gig, because I think that's a really great way, especially for those people out of school. I know when I finished my master's and I was just freelancing in New York, every gig I did, I would always write down in my notebook, like, hey, wait, that other person sounded like this. Like, I should work on that. Like, that is a thing that I admire in my playing a lot. And even now, with everything online, everyone is posting videos of themselves. And so instead of feeling, negative or jealous or angry that that person sounds amazing at that random cornet solo, you can be like, I should practice cornet solos. What a great idea. And I know that at the beginning of everything shutting down, I watched a ton of Melissa's videos. So thank you for posting those and inspiring me to get my butt together as well.
Totally true.
Sweet.
Yeah. Being jealous and like weird like that. It's actually, again, Winton is the one who taught me not to do that because one time we were driving the car somewhere. And he actually almost like got into an accident. And he was like, "Oof, man, we almost had three little Clifford Browns in the car." and and he was, but I remember him saying he saw me and my high school friend interacting. He's like, "No, don't be jive with each other. You need to learn from him, Rodney. You need to learn how he articulates. You need to learn from Rodney's this." And he taught us to learn from each other, and so ever since then, that's how it's always been. You can learn from everyone, like no matter if they play better than you, worse than you. We're all different. You can always pick up things from other people. Chloe Swindler, when she gave a class on recently she was talking about support and changing notes. I have been using that in every single practice session now the last few weeks, and it's helping me so much. Just this one little nugget, of information, and you never know who you're going to get it from. So yeah, you really want to be open to that.
Yeah, and I've also found that a lot of my best friends and closest friends are also trumpet players who just inspire me to be better. And we have the friendship, and number one, we can be colleagues and also push each other. And then we also have a beautiful friendship outside of that. And so I love a supportive studio. I'm so here for it. And that's why I'm a professional student, I guess. I really like having that support system.
Well, I
Well,
think it's hard because some people don't see it like that. Like some people don't see our lives as musicians as something that we're always working on and always getting better. I mean, hopefully you haven't encountered this, but I know I've seen like from gigs and stuff, some people who are just like, oh, like I'm great. Like I don't practice. I don't need to work on doing some random thing. Like, they're not excited to play their instrument every day and excited to explore and get better. And so I love that we all have that mindset and hopefully everyone else has it as well.
yeah, and it's interesting. Bud Herseth, he used to say, "You're either getting better or worse. That's it. You're going up or down. You choose." So, so yeah.
I love that. I never knew he said that. That's amazing. I say
I
that in one of my master classes. And so like now I can just quote him because I do not know more than Bud Herseth. So
Yeah, it was an old tape that I had actually that I used to listen to over and over again of a master class that he gave. And then yeah, that's what he said. You're getting better or you're getting worse.
yep. Um, could you tell us a little bit about how the whole virtual workshop was going or is going for you all and what it is for anyone who doesn't know?
Well, we just finished it. And it's a little different than things that have been more compact. 'Cause I know there's some more like the ones that you guys are doing where it's a more compact thing in like 3 days or something. What we decided to do was to spread something out over 10 weeks and have it every Sunday. And so we did that starting back in October. We just finished in December. And I think we're going to do another one starting mid-January, and it's going to go till April. And I'm so glad that we did it that way because it's every week in 10 weeks' time. But what happens is, first of all, every week, everyone has to, well, we have like participants that play, a few of them. But then they also have the books that I had them read each week. They're responsible for reading a book. Yeah, I know. I know I'm tough. And
No,
they
I
had,
love that. It's such a great idea.
yeah, and there are books like Zen and the Art of Archery or The Tao of Pooh or The Inner Game
I
of
love that book.
or yeah, there's books like that. So many of them out that are out there, and so we would each week we'd read a book and we discuss it. That was part of what we would do, and they would play, and I also brought people in who were trumpet people, those sort of Winton and Allison Balsam and and Tom Hooten did something, and Mike Sachs and Esteban last from Chicago Symphony just did something. So they get coaching by them, but we'd also interview them, kind of like this sort of thing. And yeah, it was so. By the end, it's just the thing that was so cool. I also showed them George Jansen, that older Italian gentleman that I talked about, who taught me in Winton. He has a specific routine that he had us do, and so I showed them that routine over the course of 10 weeks. It builds you from like in the Schlossberg from like playing in the middle register to a high C. And I showed that to them. And the most rewarding thing of the whole thing was around week 9, I got an email from one of the people who was she's kind of like a comeback player, older lady who, I mean, not that much older. I mean, she's like a little bit older than me. But she's kind of a comeback player. And she emailed me, she's like, Rodney, I just played a high C. It squeaked out, but I got it. And that was so rewarding because I knew it was going to happen if because she was she took the whole 10 weeks and did the things step by step. So, and how can when else are you going to have that opportunity to have all those people? You can't get a master class one after the other, Tom Hooten and Allison Balsam and Winton. It's just people are too busy normally. So so that's all of these sorts of things. This COVID thing is terrible. The pandemic's awful. It's heartbreaking. Um, but I've always said I think we're going to kind of emerge from it like better. When Winton gave the perfect answer, someone said, "What do you see in the future, like after this pandemic?" And he was like, "Well, what did Berlin and Japan look like after 1945?" when they rebuilt it. He's like, that's what I see. So I like talking to people like that, he's always been visionary, and I think it's true for society. I think this awful, awful thing, just like when you have something awful in your life and then you rebuild your life, most of the time you end up better. And I kind of think that's where we're going with all of this, the social justice and healthcare and everything. I think that's where society is going. So, that's why I'm down there practicing so I'm not the sucky one.
Yep. Crazy good advice there. I also like just how positive you are and how positive, Winton was when that question was asked. Because, yeah, so many people now are so negative and saying, the industry is dying and all of this stuff. And it doesn't help us. It doesn't help us get inspired to practice. It doesn't help our students. It also doesn't help, like literally, why should you come to a brass workshop if everything is closed? Like, no, you're coming to learn so you can get really good for when everything is open. So all of these positive mindsets are really helpful.
And when things open, and just so people know, I mean, like that's the good thing about being in this business, having your own company, and we're seeing the demand. It's just human nature. When you take something away from someone and say, you know what, you can't have this for a really long time, then that's going to make them want it even more. So the demand for concerts in the future is huge, and anything that gets scheduled is like sold out when they let people buy tickets. So that's something, especially that's what we do as artists and musicians. Yeah, we're the last ones. We're going to be the last ones to get the shots in our arms. Yes, but I guarantee you, we are going to be in such high demand. So dying, no, not even close. We're going to be in super high demand when things get going again, because art, that magic of art, people have not had it in so long. So there's no reason to think it's dying or we're barely going to make it. No, it's going to be much better actually in the future.
Yeah, that's amazing, and I think that students and people who are particularly in my age group need to keep hearing that. And my teacher Jim always tells us this is going to end, and when it does end, there's going to be a lot of playing opportunities, and your skills are on loan. And if you don't keep using them and keep brushing up on them, you're going to lose the car. It's like a car. You're going to lose your double tonguing. You're going to lose this and that. So it all kind of goes together. You have to keep your knives sharpened during this time because people want live music, and even in these concerts that we've been doing outside, there's a turnout and people are happy, and we all miss that interaction. So I'm really obviously we're all looking forward to getting back to it, but I'm excited to see all the new stuff that emerges from this, because even just through Zoom, this workshop emerged from this, and I'm excited to see all the live things that do occur after this.
Yeah, yeah, me too.
Just before we ask our last question, I want to make sure, I think I accidentally X'd out of Facebook to see if anyone has asked any questions. I don't think so. We also shared this video in 2 trumpet Facebook groups, and so we'll check back there as time goes on and see if anyone had any comments and then questions and relay them to you as well. Do you have it? You mentioned those 2 books. I was wondering if you had any other like resource recommendations for people to check out, like outside of the practice room during this time.
Oh gosh, it's always about books for me. One is that I've read it multiple times now is The Tao of Jeet Kune Do by Bruce Lee. It's that book when his back was injured that he wrote. That one's amazing. You can really relate it to art and making music. Um, there's another one. The title is slipping my mind right. No, The Talent Code. That's what it is. The Talent Code. That one was life changing. Actually, that one I did a book on tape while I was cutting grass in my house here, um, and and it talks about I think it's called myelin. This sort of like when we learn this sort of chemical reaction that happens, and it describes what actually happens as you learn and when you practice and the best way to practice so you could keep developing it. Um, so like though I think those are two really good starter books.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. All right. I'm going to triple check that there are no questions. All right. So our last. Oh, sorry. No,
I think
after
we should
you.
ask our last question, and then I think that Stephen might have one.
Ooh.
Which Stephen?
Stephen Ray Vogel.
Oh, Stephen
Our
Ray.
friend.
Hi, Stephen. Thanks for tuning in.
Love it.
All right, here we go. He asks, how do you foresee us keeping this spirit of giving, connecting, and collaborating when the world goes back to normal? What parts of our art got better, pardon me, during this time, and how can we carry that forward?
Good question. So giving, connecting, and collaborating. Um, well, it's funny, I mean, because we've all been so apart, but I think our attention though has focused on things that maybe it wouldn't have in the past, like George Floyd. That sort of thing was happening a lot. I've seen it happening ever since I was a 19-year-old. It used to happen to me, as far as the way I was treated or pulled over by the police or things like that. And but the whole world's attention, I think, turned to it because the world was on this pause. So when we go back, I think the important thing is that we don't lose that we don't think that we're going to just go back and everything's going to be like it was before. Because my experience with life and with tragedy and things that happen, traumas, it doesn't ever go back to the way it was before. It can go back to better. So that's, I think, kind of like, yeah, paying attention to the things that we noticed in this moment and then bringing that into your art and to your performance and to what you do and to how you present what you do, music. I mean, things like what you guys are doing, where you're bringing this up. Like what you guys are talking about, this stuff was kind of like, shh, don't talk about it. So that change is, the more we do that, the better things are going to be for everyone and for what we do and for art. So it's a good question.
All right, time for our last question. So we are wondering, what does your ideal brass community look like?
You know what it looks like to me? It's like, when you're in New York and you just step out in the street or any major city in downtown part of America, like in the middle of the day when everyone is out there working. It looks like that. That's what the brass community would look like. External characteristics like race and age, gender, all of that, all those things become insignificant. And it's all about it's about how well you play and how you treat people, and that those two things. Because what are the two things when, like, I think about big brass when I hear about, like, because it always comes as a recommendation for someone to play with big brass with our group. What are the two things that are always asked? So, how do they play, and really nice person, and they play really well. It's usually in that order. It's those, because that's what's important. So that a brass community that had that look, like the downtown of Americans, major city, and had that sort of vibe to it, where people were treating each other well. That's, to me, that's ideal, and that's, big brass. Our group, that's, we try to create that in our little cone, when we go out and perform, and I would love it if more of the brass community was like that.
I love that answer, and thank you so much for doing that in your group and setting an example to the rest of the brass community. It's definitely just the beginning, I think, of where we can go and what we can do as a community. So thank you for that. And if there are no other questions, well, if you have any questions now, drop them. But if there are no other questions, we will wrap up this incredible Q&A bold chat number 9 with Mr. Marsalis. Thank you so much for being here today. It's such a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you, and can't wait to be out there on the road, and can't wait to, both of you are playing with us with big brass soon.
Mm-hmm.
It's
Looking forward. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thanks, Kate. Thanks, Melissa. I'll see you guys soon.
All right, y'all take care.